Council will call this joint meeting of the Meridian City Council and Ada County Highway District Commissioners to order. For the record, it is January 21st, 2025 at 4:33 p.m. We'll begin this meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts. Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilman Whitlock.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here.
And we will call the meeting to order on our side.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I move that we adopt the joint meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. We will move on to action items. First item up is item 1, Ada County Highway District 2026 through 2035 year plan update. Good afternoon.
Have the presentation coming? Okay. Right. So good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, council members, and commission. For the record, Rebecca Phillips with ACHD Planning Division. Here before you today to present on ACHD's 5-year plan and the details pertaining to the 2630 update, which is currently in development. And I'll go over the schedule, the outreach efforts, programming objectives, and key dates. I was told to use the keyboard, right? There we go. We're excited to share that starting with this update, the plan formerly known as the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan will now be referred to as ACHD's 5-year plan. This was a collaborative change with an ultimate goal of simplification, ensuring a clearer and more transparent approach to this complex planning process. Moving on to the schedule for the development of the 2630 5-year plan. This plan is an extensive year-long process. Throughout this period, we collaborate closely with all of our partner agencies at multiple stages and conduct thorough public outreach and engage in many internal discussions regarding programming decisions. I've included today's presentation here on the schedule, and currently we are in the initial outreach phase, seeking public comments and working with our partners as they review their priority lists. We are offering presentations much like today's, as well as one-on-one meetings with all agencies to ensure they have the necessary information. Many have taken advantage of these opportunities so far, and we've had several touch points with the Meridian planning staff so far in the process. So here's a snapshot of our ongoing public outreach efforts. This map is live currently. There are a few ways for the public to participate. On the first tab of this interactive map displayed in the image in the left top hand corner, the public can rank and provide feedback on the currently adopted projects that are in the 25-29 5-year plan. On the second tab pictured below on the right, the public can rank and comment on any projects in the new Beyond 2029 tab. This new tab that we created last year includes all of the projects in the ACHD database, encompassing requests from partners, the public, elected officials, as well as adopted plans, such as our neighborhood plans and all future projects from the 2020 CIP update. And so each of those tabs allows participants to click on their project of interest, read the project details and schedule, and provide their feedback and ranking on a scale of 1 to 3. All feedback generated will be sent back to the corresponding agencies to assist them in reviewing their priority lists. And to date, we currently have 471 comments, and we're nearly at the halfway mark. Now to highlight a few of our early programming objectives for the first 2 years, 26 and 27, the 5-year plan will be developed with a balanced budget. This year, we will continue to approach project programming with an enhanced flexibility, ensuring more transparency throughout our process and providing increased staff-to-staff meeting availability. As you might recall, last year, our main focal point on the plan was how inflation has impacted the project programming. And this year, we are focusing efforts on acceleration or addition of our partners' top priorities. We will also focus on ways to increase the alignment of the project phases, and we will minimize those gaps. It is staff's main goal to examine ways that we can continue to build more. So that being said, I did want to share a brief overview of the City of Meridian's top project priorities in regards to your 2024 list. The district will be placing a greater emphasis on these high priority projects, aiming for a more strategic approach to minimize those gaps, like mentioned before, and assign dedicated years to phases as appropriate and as funding allows. This list up here, this displays your top 3 rankings for the program projects, and we are excited to review your updated list for 2025. We also wanted to share and highlight some of those exciting major construction projects looking forward to this year. These are currently underway and all in the Meridian area. So we have Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity, Lake Hazel and Eagle intersection, the Meridian downtown pavement and pedestrian improvements, Overland Road, Linda Road overpass, and the U-Stick projects relating to State Highway 16. So now let's go over those key dates. As mentioned, we are currently in the agency priority list review and public outreach stages. So once the public outreach concludes on February 5th, we will ensure that all those comments for Meridian are returned to you before you submit your final council approved priority list. Heather and Brian have been excellent to work with, and we will continue to be available for those staff-on-staff meetings to discuss any of your priorities or process. So on May 14th, we will present all of those public and agency feedbacks from this initial draft, or initial outreach, I'm sorry, to our ACHD commission. And I will send a reminder to all of your staff as we get closer to that date. And moving into July, August, we will release the initial draft of the 2630 plan, open it up for a second outreach and comment period. I know those dates are a bit further out, but I did want to ensure that they are noted here. And overall, we are planning for the regular adoption in September. So with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions on the 5-year plan process. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Council, commissioners, questions, comments, thoughts? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Well, I just wanted to reassure everybody that after yesterday, when President Trump said that costs were going to go way down, that maybe inflation won't be such a big factor for this 5-year plan. Just kidding.
Commissioner McKinney.
I wonder if you could talk for a moment about kind of the status of the Highway 16 related projects. They're of interest, I know, to Meridian, our interconnection with Highway 16 and where those things stand. I know some of them are in the works. I just thought the council might want to know general overview.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Madam President. For those particular project updates, I might refer to someone more knowledgeable of those than I.
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Diane Bevins, Deputy Director of Projects. So U-Stick and Black Cat and U-Stick Black Cat to 10 Mile are under construction now. U-Stick 10 Mile to Linder will be under construction in 2026. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, that takes care of everything east of Black Cat. And then we have U-Stick Hawaii Storm to Black Cat. That one I don't have the exact year, but it'll be beyond 26, so 27 or 28. But we are, and then City of Nampa has the project I think everyone's aware of, from Phyllis Canal to Hawaii Storm, which the north half of that is in the city of Meridian's area of impact. And they plan on constructing that in 2025 or starting in 2025.
And McMillan.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Madam President, we do have Franklin, McDermott to Black Cat as well. And that intersection and that one's further out in the program right now at 2030. So.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Just for Diane again, the portion of Franklin that you just mentioned in 2030, that's assuming we have the funding from the state to complete that, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, that will be up to the commission through our 5-year plan and budget process as we go forward.
Okay, because so far that's what the commission has indicated a strong preference for the last 3 years. Thanks.
Commissioner Nielsen?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is more of an observation, maybe a question for Meridian. I was just looking at your excellent citizen survey results from last year, and the investments in the current 5-year work program with the improvements downtown and then the road widenings. Do you think that represents what you've heard from the citizens? And I'm going to send that to the other ACHD commissioners. I thought it was an excellent survey, and maybe we can look at those transportation questions together in the future. I think it was 88% were in favor of widening and about 75% for sidewalk improvements and bikeways and things. So we're always trying to find the sweet spot. So,
Council, you want to give feedback?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Cavanagh?
I think the emphasis on that question depends on where you live. And, I appreciate the report and certainly lots to celebrate in Meridian, particularly for a lot of our downtown residents. That sidewalk improvement has been vastly needed. And I've heard for feedback from some of my friends in downtown who've seen that starting to move forward, and there's a lot of excitement about it. If you find yourself in maybe a different part of Meridian, I think of my friends who live on McMillan. There's probably a lot of emphasis for roadway expansion on McMillan that maybe we wouldn't see if you lived off of Overland in South Meridian. So I think that the focus really depends on where you live. And much like you as a body kind of touch on different corners of the county and provide that perspective, we too, being elected by a district, I think hear from different segments of our community based on where we live about what they view are those transportation priorities.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question though.
Councilman Cavanagh?
So again, thank you for the presentation. It's always good to, quite frankly, I appreciate kind of this proactive steps that the commission and the district is making to be a little more transparent. I think sometimes we get requests, we feel like we send them off to a black box, and later on we get updated as to kind of what the project priorities are going to be. So I love this new approach. One of the things that I've heard, and we've done these joint meetings, is yes, there are Meridian's priorities, but there's also the priorities of the district as a whole. So can you maybe give the Meridian City Council a flavor? What are the priorities for the Ada County Highway District over the next 5 years? What are the parts of the valley that you guys seem to be more focused on? And how does that impact other projects that may be of priorities to Meridian residents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councilmember Cavanagh. I'll speak on behalf of the district as a whole. Our priority will always be to keep people safe and to keep the infrastructure and the investments that the public has made in good working condition. That said, we are very focused on, as was shared, we are taking a deep look at where your priorities are and how we are supporting you. The emphasis, I will say, and you saw up there the list, the top 3 projects, and you may ask, where's the other 100? If you think of a 5-year period of time, that's about what you can accomplish in a 5-year period of time. So I would just encourage, as you look at your priorities, that you look and emphasize those top 3, because that's where our emphasis is going to be in making sure we support that. There obviously is a lot of priority in dealing with some ongoing congestion challenges that there are, both in Meridian as well as in Southwest Boise area. Those are two hotspots that we've had longstanding challenges that we're working heavily to try and address, as well as addressing the maintenance and safety needs throughout the county.
Okay, follow up.
Councilman Gavner.
Director, I appreciate that. And maybe where my question is more coming from is we recognize that as a city, we're looking at kind of transportation priorities for us, but we're not always we're not the traffic engineers, and you employ some of the best in the country. And so oftentimes when we've seen that pop up in Meridian over the past year, project that the highway district is wanting to move forward on that maybe didn't land on our priority list. And it's been suggested in different, commission hearings that because we're moving forth with those projects that the highway district has brought to us that are very costly, that maybe priorities that the Meridian City Council is identifying aren't going to be embraced. And so when I hear those comments, it certainly gives me pause. And so trying to get a good understanding about if we continue to bring what we think are our priorities, should we have a good level of confidence that those projects are going to be embraced and elevated? Or are they going to be pushed down on the list because there's some other needed infrastructure that Meridian didn't emphasize that the district's choosing to move forward with?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Commissioner Cavanagh, great question. The answer is yes, you should have confidence that we will be moving your priorities forward.
True.
Now, there are times when funding changes priorities, right?
Certainly.
The allocation of funding by the state to direct and to make those improvements and connections to State Highway 16, that created some priorities that were not necessarily on your list.
Certainly.
But our emphasis as we are looking at this is we're doubling down and relooking and making sure that those top priorities are the ones that we are emphasizing and making sure that those are moving forward as quickly as possible.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Director. Appreciate being here.
Maybe to piggyback off of one comment, just so I understand, talked about the plan, the first 2 years being balanced.
Mhm.
I'll use that word. Is that a change in practice or philosophy? Has that traditionally been the practice and philosophy, just so people understand what that means or doesn't mean?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, that has been the regular process, so nothing's changed there.
Perfect.
Any further 5-year plan questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the feedback and the update on the 5-year plan and how you're trying to simplify it and take feedback. With regard to North Meridian, we have found that corridor approach works well. Our Transportation Commission really likes that approach of trying to widen entire corridors together so we really get like functionality. So I appreciate the focus on Ustick Road specifically. I think that'll end up benefiting everybody. I know Locust Grove is on there, Fairview to Ustick. I'm sure you are all aware there is a big bottleneck though, once you get to Ustick and you're trying to get to Chinden. So, when it comes to like just having a functional north-south corridor, I think that's important. And also McMillan, I think, has continued to be a discussion that we're having, but hopefully the widening of Ustick will help take a little bit of pressure off. But I think we should continue to not lose sight of it, make sure that we're, keeping it in mind as a potential one day, even if it's a bit far into the future. That was the main feedback I had, just not only impacting my district, but I think other districts in North Meridian are kind of seeing that bottlenecking when it comes to Locust Grove specifically, but yeah, just having something functional north-south, I think is pretty important.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments?
Mayor, I just want to say I've been really impressed with the Transportation Commission and the resources that you put and support that you provide to it. I took it upon myself to kind of look at their last couple of meetings, and every city should emulate what you're doing here in Meridian. I thought it was just very professional, very thorough. And then one other comment I wanted to say, as the 5-year program, see, I'm learning, goes forward, that city priority, that's going to be a column in what we look at. So just wanted to let you know about that.
So council, you'll have your work, we'll have our work cut out for us, but I'm not going to abdicate all those responsibilities, but I think those top projects really need to be top of mind to council as we go through this and make sure that they weren't just put on there by someone at some point in time because we knew they wouldn't get fixed, but we want to make a point. It's what do we really want to see move forward? So, perfect.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
having me
much.
today.
So item 2 is Linda Road, Franklin to Overland project update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, council members, and commissioners. For the record, Reed Selmer, project manager with ACHD. I'm here to provide a quick update on the status of the Linda Road, Overland Road to Franklin Road project. But before I get into the body of this presentation, I would like to extend a big thank you to the city of Meridian. Your partnership with ACHD has been of incredible value, and the coordination that has gone into this project has been great. We are just so thankful that you have assisted in bringing it to where it is today, and we're excited to continue in our partnership on this project moving forward and on future projects to come. And in keeping with that theme of partnership, we can hop into the body of the presentation. So, as a reminder, this project is a joint effort between the City of Meridian, ACHD, and ITD. An interagency agreement for collaborating on the design of this project was executed in May of 2022. And this brings us through to our most recent design milestone, which was the 99% plans, which were submitted in May of 2024. And when that occurred, it launched us right into right-of-way, which is ongoing right now. And we are approximately 50% complete with the right-of-way process. Moving on to some more project specifics. As a reminder, the full project was split into 2 phases for construction. Phase 1 consists of the construction of the Overland Road and Linda Road intersection improvements. These include the construction of the brand new north leg that I-84 overpass will tie into, the widening of the south leg, installing 10-foot multi-use paths, and improving the 4 corners and signals. As far as schedule is concerned with this phase of the project, we will be advertising and opening bids for phase 1 of this project in February, so very soon. And construction is set to start in March of this year and run through to the end of the summer. There's currently budgeted $4.3 million for the construction of phase 1. And this amount consists of the strategic initiative funding that was awarded to the City of Meridian, and it is sufficient to cover the entirety of this phase's construction. Phase 2 consists of constructing the I-84 overpass, widening the remainder of the roadway north of I-84 to Franklin to 5 lanes, 2 in each direction with a median, installing raised median islands at various locations, adding 10-foot multi-use pathways on both sides of the road, updating irrigation crossings at the Kennedy Lateral and 10 Mile Creek, realigning Verbena Drive and building a new basin at the intersection of Verbena Drive and Linder, which is just north of what is shown on this screenshot. Some schedule notes for phase 2. As I noted, right-of-way acquisition is currently underway and will likely be completed by early 2026. And also, as noted on the earlier slide, we're about 50% through this. In total, we have $7 million budgeted for the right-of-way acquisition task. And for construction on phase 2, we're scheduled to begin in the summer of 2026, and it should last through the summer of 2027. There's currently budgeted $7.5 million for the ITD overpass and $17 million for the roadway portion. So in total, across both phase 1 and 2, we're looking at about $28 million for construction of this whole project. Lastly, in order to implement some of the city-specific improvements like water, sewer, landscaping, median art fixtures, and patterned concrete for the overpass, we have coordinated interagency agreements and cost share agreements with City of Meridian staff. So that brings us up to date with where we're at on this project. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Reed. Commissioner Colthorpe.
Not so much a question, but I'm gonna help someone out here. We have one of the property owners that lives along the north section of Meridian here tonight. Riley, you want to wave your hand? Riley Johnson, you may know him already. I don't know. I know you're in the midst of your negotiations. But those of you who are involved with this project, if you could give him your business card and phone number and shake his hand, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Do.
Council Commission questions, comments? Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you for the information. Just two quick questions on that. With regard to the right-of-way process, you indicated we're about 50% done. So put it in numbers for us. How many total parcels are involved, and how many parcels have been taken care of, and those that remain?
There are roughly 50 parcels total on phase 2 of the project, and I think we've acquired about 23 of them, if I remember correctly. So
The right-of-way for phase 1, that's all taken care of, and that's ready to go forward.
right of way on phase 1, there are a few parcels that are they're going to sign them, but they haven't been signed at this point. But we have no concerns about the right of way on that portion of the project.
Okay, all right, good. Then looking at the construction and the the total costs and so on, I'm interested the participation in our agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department. Where does that stand? I guess what I'm asking is that funding ITD's portion of the funding that they've agreed to provide, is that agreement set and all taken care of, or is that still something that has to be taken care of and allocated on their part, or is that already in process or done? Where does that stand?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, I'm not sure.
You're getting phone a friend.
Mr. Mayor, council members, commissioners, for the record, Justin Lucas with ACHD. So to answer your question directly, Commissioner McKinney, we don't have that agreement yet. So I'm talking about the formal agreement between ACHD and ITD, which would allow for the transfer of the funding, this approximately $7 million. We're working on that, and we'll bring that back as we get closer towards construction, and that's totally typical. We have coordinated very carefully with ITD on this project, and they have allocated the funding within the STIP, the transportation plan that they maintained, similar to our 5-year plan. So the money is allocated. They are planning for it. It's just now a function of agreements and final budgeting to make it happen.
So on their end, their timing with regard to the financing, that's all set and is completely in line with ours.
It is set.
Justin, don't go, just to clarify on that, is it subject to the next year's STIP approval by them or that to be fully executable? That's been my understanding, but if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be told otherwise.
No, it's, Mr. Mayor, it's always subject to their approval for the fiscal year where the money will be allocated. But it would be extremely atypical for them to remove funding from a project of this size and scope, which we've coordinated with them on for this long.
Of which they gave us a grant to help build with their money.
There's a long story for sure.
Yes. Thank you. Council, any additional questions, comments? And I don't know if this is for you, but how does this play into the next section of Linder that we've kind of talked about?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, council members, and commissioners, that's the next presentation that I will be giving if you're ready to move on.
Absolutely. I didn't see it specifically. So Perfect.
Again, my name is Diane Bevins. I'm the Deputy Director of Projects. You guys, there's some things blocking my screen, so hopefully you can see all the numbers on the screen there. So the current status is this lender pine to USTIC. The ACHD Commission adopted the concept study in September of 2024. And the concept that was adopted, as you remember, is the 5-lane section with either a 2-way left turn lane or medians with the 10-foot multi-use pathways on either side. As you can see by the project costs, this is a very expensive project, with right-of-way being the most expensive phase of the project, which is not the normal for, as you saw, like with the other lender, with right-of-way being 7 and the project being more than that. So I can speak from experience that buying a single home on a project is very difficult. So buying 35 homes, which is what this phase includes, will be a feat that will need a very strategic approach. So our ability to implement a project of this size and a right-of-way of this magnitude is complex and challenging. So the big question is, how do we get this done? And I did put this question on the build together slide because it will take partnership and working with the City of Meridian to get this accomplished. So I see us working together to implement this strategy, especially around the right-of-way, the 35 parcels, and the remnant parcels that's going to create as we start buying homes and then raising them and leaving empty lots. And that could happen over a period of time. So we could have empty lots sitting for multiple years at a time. So that's why we'd want to coordinate with the city on a plan to do that. So begin early right-of-way acquisition prior to design starting. Just because it's such a big number, 18.8 is the estimate, so it could even go up from there as the years go on. And 35 homes is a lot of homes and people to relocate, and that just takes time. So we would like to get a head start on the right-of-way acquisition before we ever even contemplate beginning design. And then, consider other strategies as we work together, such as building the project in phases, because it is such a big project. So bottom line, if the city chooses to prioritize a project of this size and this expense, it will take a significant amount of time, and it could impact the number of projects that ACHD is able to do in the city of Meridian. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Council, questions?
Mr. Mayor,
It's Council Member Taylor.
first, my apologies for being late. ITD had an accident on their freeway, so I took the surface streets and I was late. So I do apologize, but I was listening to the presentations on my drive-in. When you say phases, can you give me a little bit more color and context? Would that be phases as in segments of the roadway phases, or what do you mean by that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Councilmember Taylor, yes. If I'm remembering correctly, the details, it's about 1.5 miles. So you have Pine to Cherry and then Cherry to USTIC. So you could break out some of the intersections. You could break out, the 1/2 mile segment, that kind of thing.
Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you. Diane, just a couple of quick questions on this, and this is looking, well, I have a question and I guess a comment. On the right-of-way question, which is, as you say, the biggest issue on this section of Linder Road. Is it possible, and how have we had success in the past of when we need to acquire a large number of residential parcels, and of course, that's a big disruption for the people involved and so on, and that's part of the reason it's so complicated and expensive. But getting the parcels kind of piecemeal, acquiring one and tearing it down, and then having now a number of residents who might for a number of years be living next to a vacant lot or things of that sort. And I know the city would be concerned about that sort of condition in any stretch of its roadways. Is it possible to negotiate with the property owners, and is this something we attempt to do, to try to get them all to, so that it can all happen kind of all at once at some future date. We aim for a future date to try to get most of it to happen then if possible. And that is to say, make a deal with the property owner that, this will be coming, a year and a half from now or 2 years from now, and here's when we want it to happen. We had success. Do we approach it that way? And when we do, have we had success in doing that in any way to try to, get things to kind of happen simultaneously rather than one at a time over many years?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I would say we have not had success at doing that because we're dealing with human beings, right? We're dealing with individuals that are passionate about their home. It's emotional for them. And in my 15 years at ACHD, this will be by far the most we've ever bought for one project. 8 is about the number I can remember. So we'd probably have to go way back in ACHD's history, like Curtis Road, to see this magnitude of homes bought at one time. So we have people contacting us already after the concept was adopted, wanting to move now. So, starting now and then with the people that are willing to move now is the right approach, and then getting them moved and settled. Generally, people don't want to wait because we're basing values off, we're appraising the property and they're looking for properties off today's values. So if we agree on a cost and they wait several years, then we don't know what the housing prices are going to do. They go up, go down. Around here, mostly they just go up, right? So usually people want to be settled. If you understand, they want to know the timeline and what, because moving your home is a big life experience, so.
Okay, no, I understand, and that's, of course, it's always a complicated task to try to acquire a large number of properties from a whole bunch of different owners looking forward. So I don't envy the project, or at least I recognize its complexity. And I guess by way of a comment, this is sort of a rhetorical question. I have to admit, every time I drive through that portion of Linder Road, I shake my head and wonder what in the world possessed the city to allow all of those homes to be built right along Linder Road with all of those driveways right there in that, sort of a half-mile stretch there. Somebody wasn't thinking ahead, and I'm sure glad at least I certainly hope that we're making better planning decisions today than were made, I don't know, when was it, the 1980s or something like that? In any event, it's one of those, a lesson to learn kind of a situation where we can look at this and say, let's make sure we don't do that again. Thank you.
Mayor. Commissioner Willock, Councilmember Willock.
Diane, thank you. And just shifting gears a little bit, can you educate me on how you approach rail crossings? Do you envision something similar to 10 Mile there on Linder Road, or how extensive of a rail crossing, and what's involved in getting that approved and built?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Councilmember Whitlock, it is a lot of coordination with UPRR, the rail, the railroad company that has control there. And it is generally a very long process. They have their processes that we work through, and a lot of things that are required come from them. So we will go in with a initial idea or design based on an adjacent roadway like 10 Mile. But sometimes they come back and they want gates or they don't want gates, and they have a lot to say about their infrastructure. But generally we get our 5-lane section, we get the multi-use pathways across the railroad with no problems. It's just working through some of the details on their infrastructure.
Follow up. Is there any cost sharing involved on their side?
Generally, no. Generally, that is a project expense.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Commissioner McKinney's point, when I moved here in '96, I looked at Linder and said, boy, that's going to be, because that's a river crossing and right away that was going to be a problem. But I would encourage the city, and this might be a good role for Compass to facilitate. I had a similar issue along some of the state highways in Canyon County. We wrote an ordinance with public purposes being noise impacts to property owners to have increased setbacks along those arterial roadways with perhaps a secondary benefit of then not having to buy those structures. I mean, you're typically going to have to buy land, but you really don't want to buy structures. And I would encourage Meridian and looking at these corridors if there's opportunities for that. And it might be something, like I said, it might be a good role for Compass to look at and try to identify corridors that would benefit from that. Even if you prevent 3 or 4 structures, that would pay for the work right there from being built. And I'm speaking as a person who signed off on a building permit right in this Middleton bypass right of way because I had absolutely no choice legally. So I would hate to have local governments have to do that in the future.
I believe we are covered by all of our corridors. We work with
Really?
ACHD to ensure the building doesn't occur and then moving forward.
Yes, move.
Obviously, going back is a different story.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
hey, quick question, just along the lines of some of the questions. As you're working with the individuals whose properties you've identified that will need to be acquired, is that process going to be, and I'm asking you to forecast a little bit in the future, so if you can't answer it, that's perfectly acceptable, but is this something that can be negotiated out, or do you anticipate having to use eminent domain to move ahead with this? Because I understand the sensitivities of timing being a real challenge. And so I'm wondering, do you anticipate, can we just kind of work through this, or are we going to have to find other ways to make this happen?
Mr. Mayor, Madam President, 99% of our properties we negotiate successfully. So it's only about 1% that end up in condemnation. So our goal always going in is to be able to negotiate. And because we have willing sellers at this point, since we have people calling us, I don't see a problem with that process. We have, we pay fair market value, and we also pay for relocation services, which could include points on a mortgage. It could include moving expenses, differential payments, that sort of thing.
Mr. Mayor, quick follow-up, just a comment maybe. I remember last year when Brooke Green was giving us, maybe it was even in this meeting, a sort of an update or a separate meeting. She had kind of identified some of the individual outreach that ACHD had done to individual homeowners. And I commend you for that outreach early to try to let them know what was happening and their options, and so that there's no surprises. So just, I think that's great work on your part. And I think that outreach is really important because we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where there's an adversarial relationship between ACHD or the city of Meridian and our citizens.
And all of those meetings, we had a right-of-way agent at those meetings as well. So we already have that relationship established.
I'm pretty sure this question is going to bypass you, so I'll look to the 2 in the front row or the commissioners up here. But you know, this project is in our top 10, correct? But it's not the top 3. Maybe it comes in at 6. You know, our other projects that are currently in the top 3 have maybe similar right-of-way needs in that. How would you like this council to consider what ACHD may or may not do about right-of-way purchases for planning of these type of projects, maybe when they're considering their 5-year work, the plan's priorities?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your question is a great one. I believe that the appropriate, with this being a higher priority, maybe not a top priority for the city, we would have reasons to begin this process of acquiring some of those properties over time. Now, when it's time to move forward with it, we would anticipate it being a higher or a top priority for the city at that point in time. I think regardless, as Diane presented, we want to work with the city and coordinate on the timing for this. And if this is your top priority, we want to know that. And that would accelerate probably the timeline for acquisition. Otherwise, we would intend to acquire over time.
Appreciate that very much. Council, any additional questions or commission, any additional questions, comments? Before we move to adjourn the meeting, any final comments from anybody? Anyone?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh, I knew there'd be a taker.
comment and maybe a question. So, and one, we appreciate, this is more just holistically. So appreciate the commission coming here to us, and these joint meetings are beneficial. I commend a shorter, more specific agenda. I like this idea. We're just talking about one or two big things we can sink our teeth into. And I'd be remiss. I think it was one of these meetings that we had 8 or 9 years ago where the topic of the Linda Road overpass came up. So again, while it feels like a long time and development's time, it's kind of going pretty quick. So we appreciate that. Which lends to my question, which was a question that was posed in one of these joint meetings that has really resonated with me, which is that if the city is willing to continue to allocate some of our dollars, does that in turn continue to accelerate projects from the highway district's perspective? And if so, what is that percentage of the project that you were looking for as a cost share to accelerate things? Sorry, Diane. You're getting your steps in today, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh. I always find that I get a lot of steps here. It's perfect. Absolutely. I believe this commission and really would look to the commission, but I do believe that allocation of funds and partnership always makes things go faster. And that's really, you can see that your top priority is moving forward, probably at a pace faster than it would have, right? Your partnership, I believe, helped ITD come to the table. It also brought ACHD more to the table on this particular topic because we were waiting for ITD to come to the table on this as well. So I do believe that that kind of partnership does accomplish and direct funds faster.
Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Councilman Cavanagh.
So like, I think a lot of cities, we're budget constrained and are always trying to do the maximum good for our community with the dollars, limited dollars that we have, no different than the highway district. As we're getting ready to go into our budget planning process for fiscal year 2026, if there were a project that we were wanting to accelerate, should the council ballpark a number of 10% of an anticipated project cost, 20%? What is that cost share that either the commission or staff are looking for to say, no, that is a proportional amount of dollars to accelerate this project to a high speed?
Madam President, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh, I think your guess is as good as ours. There is no magic number or magic percentage. I think I would emphasize, as the mayor has discussed, making it a top priority, and then we can talk about timing from there.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I want to say thank you for hosting the joint meeting and this opportunity to get together and talk about these couple of important processes and priorities. And just reiterate that we look forward to hearing your top priorities and being good partners through that process. And if there's, efforts or funds that we can pool together to help outcomes, we're really interested in that conversation.
At a percentage to be determined at a later date for Councilman Cavanagh. Yes. Fair enough. Well, with that, I'd just like to extend my thank you for attending. Thank you for the staff and the work that you've done, and frankly, I like the direction that we're going with the communication and conversations and the planning of the projects. And I think it'll hopefully, it maybe make it harder for council to come up with their top priorities, but I think it's good. It's good conversation to have if we have that guidance from ACHD on what to expect. So appreciate it very much. And with that, do I have any motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
move we adjourn the special meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.